Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining all of us, and thanks for joining from all over the world. As usual, we have great folks here from all over the US, Europe, and Asia Pacific. So thanks for joining. I am excited to be visiting and talking about this topic with Haresh Chhaya from SAP, as well as my colleague Kim Dowling. And we're going to talk about working capital. And I really subtitled this Real Savings with an Integrated Platform. Because in the case of working capital, much like in the case of many of our treasury areas, the savings that you get and the efficiencies and effectiveness that you get aren't made up ones. They are really actual, honest savings that you can gain today with this. And we'll talk about that, but we're excited to have this topic. And Haresh, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know how it is with quarter close and everything, so it's thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Brief reminder for everybody, again, as always, a little housekeeping here. We are recording the webinar, so I need to let everybody, for GDPR purposes and everything else, know we are recording the webinar. And that means that it's available to you at any time, any way that you want. You can share with your colleagues, so feel free to go ahead and do that. Ask questions throughout the session right down here. We will try to get to everybody's questions throughout. And go ahead and ask just about any question you want. We'll try and answer them real time. And for those that we don't get to, we will answer them later. Reminder that you can contact us and engage with us through a variety of different media. Obviously, come to the website. You can also engage with us through our Insight to Actions podcasts. Haresh is part of that podcast series and is doing a few more with us. So engage in that. You'll get some really great insights through that. We have some great YouTube videos that are coming up and ones that you can check out there, and join us on LinkedIn and Facebook. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right in. The first thing we'll do is why did we choose to focus on working capital? Why working capital now? We'll talk about SAP for working capital management, then a little bit about Bramasol, and a quick call to action. So when I was doing some research for this webinar, and we talked about it with Haresh and Kim and I, we talked amongst ourselves. Some things jumped out to me and why we wanted to do this. And I think 2020 has been quite an interesting year, and it really taught us again that cash is king. And we saw this because many companies moved to conserve cash. Many of them moved and looked at how they could stretch out the time it took to pay. How can I conserve my cash, hold on to my cash to pay the bills that I need to pay? How long can I stretch out payments? And then, of course, I want to ask companies to pay me sooner. And this has had a very interesting dynamic, and we'll talk about this with regard to the working capital. Some companies found themselves cash poor. Their customers paid more slowly, like we talked about in the first stage, or their inventories piled up as they saw issues and challenges with both customers ordering, but also we saw a lot of supply chain issues early on during the COVID and economic challenges that we've had. And so that added to some challenges from working capital. And of course, volatility. Volatility always plays, and in this case, the uncertainty of the market, uncertainty of supply chain. In fact, just as a trivial thing, a lot of the solutions economy and things that we order, I talk about a company called Chewy's. Chewy is actually having some issues and challenges with some of their pet foods because some of the supply chains challenges they're having there. So that leads to some issues and challenges around working capital. So in looking at this, we found that there were really 4 different types of customers that were affected and how they were affected in 4 different categories. The first of those is companies who've had significant revenue and cash impact on themselves. They're pretty straightforward, and you would see those. Macy's, for example, Frontier Airlines, Marriott, and believe it or not, Pizza Hut and Wendy's. Many of these companies have declared bankruptcy or have found that they need to reorganize under Chapter 13 or Chapter 11 based on some issues and issues that they're having with cash. Others had significant cash flow challenges because of their customers, the durable goods industry, the food industry, Steinway pianos. Not a lot of people out there who can afford to buy Steinway pianos today, and even golfing. While people are out golfing, not a lot of people are out buying new golf clubs. And so it has been an issue for them with their customers, and we're seeing a lot of that. Other companies did well. I mentioned Chewy. Amazon is absolutely on a tear. We've seen more and more people ordering. I know that we order more and more food, more and more items, rather than go out to the store, have Amazon deliver it for me. Tesla, everybody moving to electric cars. Tesla actually, unlike Ford Motor Companies, had huge growth in their electric car industry. And you've seen, of course, their stock propelling Elon Musk to 1, 2, or 3 on the richest men in the world. And so, we know that Tesla is doing well, and they've had strong cash. And what do they do with that cash, and how do they manage that? And then an interesting consequence of COVID and people staying home is they've been focusing on their homes. And the Home Depot has done actually very well for themselves during this event. Finally, there are companies out there who've changed their models significantly. Take a look at Amazon. We know all about that, and their focus on Amazon Prime and delivery and all of that. Walmart is another example where they've really pivoted and opened up the home delivery, opened up the shopping remotely so that you can pick up your groceries. PepsiCo. While we think of PepsiCo as a company that sells soda, what they saw was a significant change in the impact to their snack business. And they created a website called snack.com where you can go online and order the snacks that you want, bundle them together as you want. And they've really begun to change sort of that direct consumer, business to consumer model in their space. And finally, Walgreens. The way Walgreens changed the game here was not only do they have the COVID vaccine or the COVID test that you could do for drive up, but they've ended up partnering themselves with a remote doctor organization. And so allowing you to interface with them, partner with them, and then get your prescriptions remotely really has changed their business models. So, again, cash, inventory, receivables, payables, big changes. Haresh and Kim, but Haresh, I'll ask you first. SAP has tens of thousands of customers. You deal with dozens of customers every day almost. Maybe you can share some of the insights that SAP is seeing around this area and what you're seeing from customers.
Sure, John. So I think it would be an understatement to say that customers are becoming more and more conscious about working capital, because all the customers that I talk to, and these include very prominent names, some of them are very successful companies over decades, and even they are focusing on how they can look at their cash, their liquidity, and their overall working capital picture in a more transparent way and make better decisions. If they struggled in the COVID times, then they are looking to get out of the struggle. If they did not struggle much because probably they already had a solid business going and COVID maybe did not impact them too negatively, still they're looking to see if they can strengthen their foundation of their application footprint, their processes, and so on, so that if something like this happens again, they're prepared. In a nutshell, working capital is becoming more and more important for pretty much every company in every segment.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Kim, any thoughts from you?
Sorry, help take off myself off mute. I totally agree with what Haresh is saying, because I'm also, from my space as well, I am also seeing that, promoting that cash culture, treasuries are really looking to be more uniquely positioned to help build that awareness with each of the business functions. As it involves your payables, your receivables, your inventories, and so forth, and how their different activities actually affect cash performance, and looking to see how can they get together and work more efficiently together to get that information to flow, so they have better visibility in their cash flows, and of course using the technology as well.
Yeah, very true, very true. So I wanted to, before we dive into the SAP side and we dive into this, I wanted to take a moment to just, lay the foundations for the discussion. And let's talk about these different concepts for a moment. Working capital in and of itself, we know is affected, or is the three main drivers in this space are your receivables or your days sales outstanding. Payables is your day payables outstanding, and of course inventory with your days inventory outstanding all have an effect on working capital. The other thing that's interesting, and Haresh, I'm going to ask you to comment a little about this, because I know a couple of years ago you did a great talk and we talked about the conversion cycle, the currency conversion cycle, and how that relates DSO, DIO, and DPO, and has a direct effect on cash flow. Why is it so important for people, from your perspective, Haresh, to be keeping an eye on these things, and how does that affect cash flow and working capital?
Sure, John. So I come from the Treasury background, and I work with treasurers and Treasury organizations in my role, and they're always thinking about, how do I manage liquidity better? How do I manage the cash better across the globe? And how do they manage their risk better? So the concepts here on this page are not disconnected from that thought process. They're asking, how do I drive better working capital utilization? Why that question is important? Because if you have better working capital utilization, you have more free cash, you have better liquidity. The other question they're asking is, how can I increase cash inflow by removing bottlenecks? Now, where do those bottlenecks exist? Treasury has a very small footprint in most organizations. The biggest footprint companies have is in their supply chain, in their receivables, payables, and so on in those areas. So the bottlenecks typically exist in those areas. And if you improve the situation in the receivables management processes, payables management processes, and inventory processes, you automatically improve your overall working capital utilization, and that improves the overall liquidity, which makes treasurers happy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we introduced this concept, but working capital is really the amount of money you have to work with, to drive your business on a day-to-day basis. There's capital that you invest long-term, there's all of that, but this is really about the money that runs your business every day. And the more you can make that money work for you and drive better returns for the business, the better off. And for the conversion cycle, I think, I heard you say, think of cash flow as, flow, period, whether it's blood flow, water flow. You want that flowing freely, and the faster you can make that happen, the more simple and less blockage you can have. Think of it again. You don't want to have, there's a concept out there called corporate cholesterol, right? Where, you have a lot of different elements in there in your receivables processes that might stop the free flow of cash. And so we want to focus in on that and help companies realize how to do that. Excuse me. So Haresh, I'm going to kind of hand this over to you to talk about, but the real power and what we're here to talk about today is SAP and how SAP addresses working capital. And I know that from our perspective and what you and I have discussed is the power of what SAP brings to the table is not about the individual components. Yes, SAP has some great things for AR and AP and has great treasury solutions that in and of themselves are as good or better than any other solution out there. It's the power of that integrated platform, right?
That's true, John. And if you can flip to the next slide, thank you. So I think I want everybody to look at this picture and see and try to relate it to their businesses. If you think about the suppliers, most companies buy something from somebody, convert it through their production, logistics, or services business, and sell it to their customers. This is a life cycle of pretty much all companies that do business. And in that process, they deal with processes on the accounts payable side, they deal with processes on the invoice to cash side, accounts receivable side, they deal with treasury, they deal with supply chain and logistics operations and so on. And essentially, this cycle is what we refer to as end-to-end business value chain. And when you think in the terms of working capital management, Working capital actually is the money that is utilized to run all of these operations. Right. And the freer working capital you have, the more ability you have to invest it in growth opportunities. So it is always important to have a very coordinated approach across the full value chain. And that refers to the 3 metrics that you're referring to as well. You think about DIO, which is how efficiently you're managing your inventory and working progress inventory on assets. If you think about DPO, that means how optimally are you paying your suppliers and vendors? And if you think about DSO, how effectively are you collecting the cash that should be yours once you have sold the product to the customer? So you need to start to think about all of these put together and have a comprehensive approach to deal with it. And this is where SAP solutions come in place. We have products that allow customers to manage their payables better. We have products that allow customers to manage their receivables better. Supply chain, obviously SAP has a strong German footprint around supply chain management. At the same time, we have treasury solutions which allow customers to get global cash visibility, as well as they're tied to all the cash flows that are generated throughout this life cycle, which means the treasurers also get complete transparency of their current cash position, as well as the forecast for near term, midterm, and long term. So if you can go to the next page, let us think about this from the receivables management perspective. And I know there's quite a bit of content here, but I would like to highlight some of the things around how working capital can be managed more effectively by utilizing the receivables management portfolio. So there are a couple of things that a customer would need to look at. They need to be able to tell, what is their cash position, what is the cash flow, and how they're doing on that front. So they are going to look at SAP Cash Management, which is located in the center of this box here on the left side. Then they're going to need to manage their treasury and risk management processes if they're exposed to foreign currency risks and so on. And third, and actually the most important element here, is the receivables management piece, which is the theme of this picture here, is how do you manage your receivables and improve your working capital overall. And the center core is surrounded by processes supported by other SAP applications, which make the working capital management even better. For example, credit integration. So if you think about what this provides, customers can get the credit ratings of their business partners, and the better credit understanding they have of the customers, more efficiently they can manage the customers who are probably not in good credit standing, which means they may either withhold their shipments and so on, or if they have better understanding of the customer credit and they're able to ship more products to the customers, probably they can improve their revenue cycle better. So this is just one of the examples of how the applications in receivables management help the overall working capital management in the context of treasury. And on the right side, I have some benefits listed. You can get deep cash insights from all the integration that SAP offers. You can accelerate the invoice to cash processes if you have better understanding of your customers, the problem areas, the areas where receivables are slower, and so on and so forth. And if in some cases customers have extra cash, they can invest them through SAP Treasury and Risk Management processes. They can hedge them through our risk management functions, and so on. And at the end of the day, all of this rolls up in the working capital dashboard through analytics applications, which are available as well, where a lot of executive level KPIs are displayed, and customers can drill down into specific details from there and address the pain points or the focus areas. You can move to the next page, please. The second approach around working capital management is centralizing payment operations. This relates to more around the payables operation. So first slide we saw was more around receivables. On the payable side also, there's this comprehensive portfolio of applications. One of the things customers want to do is get a centralized view of their payments. And SAP has delivered in the last couple of years quite a few enhancements and new capabilities which allow customers to manage their payments coming from multiple sources. They may or may not be all on SAP, but they could as well be, and consolidate all these payments, allow customers to have an advanced payment factory installed and just get better control over their payment processes from security, transparency, and control point of view. What that does to your working capital, now you know when your outbound cash is going to go with more certainty. You can plan it better, and you can run these operations in a more effective way, which ultimately impacts your DPO or days payables outstanding operations as well. Next page, please. And last but not the least, I mean, if you think about the working capital, it is not just one problem to address. Working capital essentially spans across many operations across the company. And what we're looking at here is the processes around intelligent order to cash functions. And SAP has delivered quite a bit of functionality in this area around machine learning. What that has done is it has improved the overall control of most of these processes. It has made them more efficient, and it has reduced the overall cash conversion cycle by speeding up some of the bottlenecks, or removing some of the bottlenecks rather, which ultimately impacts the cash flows that a treasurer is looking for. And if you think about these chevrons up at the top, orders and billing, SAP already had a very strong portfolio of order to cash processes. There's a whole bunch of functions around there, around order and contract management, customer credit management, and billing, and so on. When you come to receivables management, this is another area where a lot of working capital functions are concentrated. You can do cash collections more effectively. Then if you move to the right, there's cash and payments. This is primarily under treasury functions. And again, you can see a lot of the things that occur in treasury, such as initiating the receipts or payments, receiving the bank statements from the banks, or processing electronic bank statements. All those functions are related to cash and payments management. And I think the important thing to note here is that all of these are connected. And this is exactly where SAP's strengths are most prominent. If you go and look for another TMS or treasury system somewhere else, they may be able to provide excellent functionality in, sorry, there's Siri starting to talk on my left. Sorry about that. So if you look at these processes, SAP's strengths lies in the integration aspect. If you consider any competitor products, they may be able to give you great functionality in one or the other area, or maybe a few combination of areas, but not such extensively from starting from order to cash to receivables to treasury. And this is exactly where I would consider SAP as the best in class solution to address complete end-to-end working capital needs. Some of the things to highlight here, there are machine learning based processes already embedded across this. One of the most important and prominent ones is cash application. You can see here under receivables management, if you look down at the bottom, we have this cash application in yellow, where customers can take the bank statements, use machine learning technology, and apply cash successfully to their open items. If there is a dispute, it can initiate disputes as well. Also, we have some predictive cash flow forecasting functionality, which is available in our Analytics Cloud platform, where customers can use some statistical models to use the existing data from multiple sources and try to predict what the cash flow will look like in the short to mid-term to long-term based on that. And these are all intelligence solutions which use the data extensively and try to predict the future. Next page, please. And I guess I'll just leave this with you, John, by saying that all of these are the solutions that can be installed on a central finance platform, which means customers who are looking to transform all of their financial operations can benefit from everything that I described before and lay out a very strong finance foundation across their company. And John, back to you.
Thank you, Haresh. I want to kind of capture all of what Haresh was talking about, and then we'll bring this into this space as well. You know, when we talked about originally, your three elements of working capital, which are your days sales outstanding, your inventory, days inventory, and of course your payables. As we think about what Haresh talked about in the space of receivables, what you want to do is really begin to accelerate the collection of that and look at processes for how do you apply the cash properly, how do you bring it in more quickly. And SAP obviously has that ability because you're creating the core finance. You have AR, which is standard AR, AP through FICO, finance and controlling. You also have more advanced functions with flexibility for what we call the subscription or solutions economy that adds flexibility for FICA, which is your another option for you for more advanced accounts receivable. But the whole purpose of that is to, again, accelerate and understand how you're going to collect cash and bring that cash in. The next piece of that Haresh talked about again was the payables, right? We talked about how do I make sure that I'm paying the right bills to the right person? How do I minimize fraud so I don't waste that money? How do I accelerate or understand that process so that I look at it? And of course, underlying both of those is your payments. And when I say payments, that's your ins and outs from your bank. And Kim, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to comment on that from your perspective. And inventory. And one of the key areas, of course, of any of these solutions, going back to accounts payable, is understanding your GRIR. And there are a lot of, Haresh talked about some of the tools like the automated cash management or cash application. There's the forecasting tools. You also have some great tools around GRIR matching that does a three-way match in an automated way so that you can accelerate that process and get a better understanding of what has been paid, what hasn't been paid, what should be paid, so that you're really managing your cash properly. And finally, from an inventory, of course, there's a lot of different tools built from an automated inventory management perspective, certainly with IoT, Internet of Things, automated inventory management tools, again, all based on machine learning. The purpose of this is to help you improve both the accuracy and the speed with which you can manage all of these processes. And only SAP really brings all of that together in S/4HANA in a way that you can really drive benefit. And we're going to talk about the metrics of some of those. Other companies are choosing to look at Treasury and working capital as really a way to focus attention on cash management. Central finance is a fantastic way for companies to take advantage of that. It's a shared services model in which you might bring together various aspects and begin to improve your efficacy around managing that currency conversion cycle globally. We have a customer who was able to leverage, for example, in-house cash to reduce their freestanding or their trapped cash by 50%. And that's a real benefit to you. So Kim, maybe you can share, you have a unique perspective of having been both a practitioner who was in the Treasury seat, if you will, but also, consulting. You've seen the evolution. What do you see about the power of all of this coming together?
Well, that's an interesting that you said that, because if I go back a little bit too many years, but when I go back and look at where we were and where we are today from where I was when I was sitting in the chair, or and my customer's perspective, a lot of the challenges were not being able to have the visibility to be able to understand exactly what were all my cash flows and be able to make the proper decisions. And when you don't have everything streamlined and centralized and have everything in one system, and you're trying to have some stuff over here in a separate treasury system or another separate systems or different ERPs, it makes it very difficult to get that right up to the minute, straight through processing and visibility of where your cash is, so you can actually be very effective in your working capital management. And if I don't have everything in one place, that's where all the challenges are. And a lot of the clients I've had, including myself back in the day, until we brought everything together holistically, it was very challenging to try to be able to have that visibility, to be able to make those decisions very quickly, to understand, how are we going to balance, our different conversion cycles, with our payables and our receivables and inventory management, and to bring it all together. And it's very, very powerful message that Haresh and yourself are delivering today.
Yeah. When we think of when we think about some of the value that our solutions for Bramasol and SAP bring forward, we often find that three categories really jump up to us in terms of talking with our customers. And the first one is control. And control of cash is so important. And I want to highlight that here in part because I want to talk a little bit for a moment about the governance, risk, and compliance aspects of this. Think about your ability to address working capital and cash from the perspective of leveraging a tool like multi-bank connectivity or the bank communications manager or bank account managers. All these tools provide you a centralized way to truly have a handle on all the cash and the money that's coming in and out of your business, but doing it in a secure way, doing it in a way that allows you the flexibility to grow your organization, but at the same time, ensuring that only the people who have the ability or should have the ability to make decisions about the disbursements of cash or the applications of those cash as they come in the business should be making. Along that, with that, creating of bank accounts, et cetera. And of course, SAP offers integrated solutions across that process. We talk about efficiencies, and of course, we've seen efficiencies here with using tools, around machine learning. But maybe Kim, you can, working capital also relates to concepts we've been talking about straight through processing, right? That's really the crux of accelerating working capital, right?
Exactly. And once you have everything all in one place where you're making your payments in either payments coming out the door, whether they be Treasury payments or they're being your AP payments, and being able to have them go through a proper process of approval in a secure method so that you're not actually worrying about, who actually initiated those payments without having the second set of eyes on those payments, and being able to straight through process that in a secure method straight through to your banks and back in again with all of your acknowledgments and so forth, as well as being able to securely bring in all of your receivables all in one place. But if you don't have that security, that's when you're going to have all those issues with the fraud and so forth. So what I like the way SAP has been set up is what a lot of the space that we play every day with our clients is being able to make sure that we're actually taking all those banks and connecting them seamlessly within SAP and securely for all payments that are flowing either in or out. And we do use multi-bank connectivity. In some cases, we do use a straight-through processing or SWIFT, but it just allows us that ability to control it and make sure that the treasurer and CFO always know that their payments of money, inflows and outflows, are very securely being processed.
Any thoughts on that, Haresh?
No, I think Kim generally covered it all, but I would just say that, that whole control of the process is quite important. And I think every customer should think in terms of what the other aspects of SAP solutions, such as governance, risk, and compliance solutions, bring to the table in enforcing the internal policies on top of, some of the controls that already come standard in Treasury, and then just enhancing the overall governance across all processes, not just Treasury, but across all finance processes. And that becomes even more powerful.
Exactly. And auditors love it because the controls are so tight and built in that it really closes all those little loopholes.
Yeah, and there's another tool out there that, speaking of state of the art and really interesting, for fraud management. You mentioned it in a previous slide, Haresh. Business Integrity Screener really is a great automated machine learning type tool that allows you to really begin to predict and look at patterns of behavior, match those patterns, and look for fraud before it happens, or patterns of fraud that might be taking place. So that's another way that SAP brings that all together. A question on here was, somebody had a question about, how do I buy working capital management? And the beauty of SAP is you don't buy working capital management. That's it. SAP brings that to you because SAP is an integrated solution, and you get your cash management in your Treasury and S/4HANA. You have your AR, you have your AP, the security. Working capital management is all part of that integral solution. And again, you get it all because you get SAP. And it becomes a matter of really thinking through, and we'll talk about this in a minute, kind of that approach. So let's talk for a moment. There are a lot of benefits to moving in this direction. And we talked about this alerts, how you can be alerted to different situations as you're managing your working capital. SAP Fiori provides, and the new SAP S/4HANA provides great screens and great tools that we'll be talking about in subsequent webinars, and we'll be showing you some of the great tools there. But imagine that you can see your cash balance, or you can see alerts to long-standing receivables that are outstanding, or payment opportunities that you might have to take advantage of discounting. You can then, through SAP Analytics Cloud or through the embedded tools that are in there, analyze that impact. What's the impact of my making decisions around where to invest my cash? What if I wanted to change my collections policies, my payment policies? What if I changed the way I do inventory, or I wanted to ship? All of those can begin to help you be alert to a situation, analyze the impact of that situation and your decisions, and then you can act to steer the business in the right direction. What we have found through SAP and through the work that we've been doing, there are a lot of, I talked at the beginning, that you can quantify the benefit. This is a space in which there aren't theoretical benefits. So for example, oh, I could reduce the amount of time I spend on ABC by the, this really does have concrete benefits. We've seen 1 to 5% improvements in profitability. If you think of this reduction in total cost of ownership, if you really looked at working capital, if by using SAP working capital, you could reduce the amount of, could increase the turnover of your cash in your business, you could reduce the amount of cash you needed to borrow. You could probably reduce the interest you're paying on that, and by millions of dollars. That's a concrete savings that you can see in your hands. If you went to looking at banking rationalization, you could rationalize your banks in accordance with trying to manage working capital. You can reduce fees, compensating balances for real-time activity, real-time savings. You can reduce your financial close. So these are not theoretical things, they are actual impacts that you can see. We talked about better insights. You can have organizational alignment with self-service analytics. The SAP Analytics Cloud allows you to manipulate and view these any way that you want. You can look at them by currency, by customer. You could look at them by vendor. You can look at them by business unit. There's a lot of great information on that. Anything, Haresh, from your perspective that you wanted to highlight on here?
I think you covered this pretty well, John, but I would say one thing is that, customers need to look at quantitative and strategic benefits in combination, because some of the strategic benefits do not reflect into monetary benefits right away, but over a period of time, when you look at the long-term returns, these strategic benefits ultimately have a very high quantitative benefit in the long term. So even though, for example, you are optimizing your decision support, well, can you say how many dollars you saved this year? Well, probably not. But when you optimize your decision support over the next 10 years, company would have made much better decisions regarding their working capital utilization. And in the long run, they will actually have very significant quantitative benefits as well, coming out of the strategic benefits listed here.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. So in moving ahead here, let's wrap up. Cash is king. You want to conserve it. We've seen how many companies have been moving very quickly and in a focused way to conserve cash, whether it's through managing that cash and the cash outlays and reducing and lengthening the time they take to pay, taking advantage of discounts to conserve and manage it. Factoring is another place that you can look at for conserving and getting cash more quickly. SAP's integrated ecosystem is the most powerful tool you have. Again, thanks for the question about working capital. That's just the benefit of SAP. SAP brings all of those solutions together for you, together into an easy way for you to begin to target specific areas, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Act now. Target cash going out and cash coming in. Reduce that via straight-through processing. Take a measured approach to how you want to address working capital. Step one, take a look at where your issues and challenges are. Make sure that you understand what your DSO, DIO, and DPO are. Do you know what your currency conversion cycle is? How quickly are you turning over cash? we can begin to help you together with SAP identify some of what we call that cash flow cholesterol or plaque. You want the cash to flow freely and quickly, but to the right places and to the appropriate places. You do not want to be bleeding cash. You want to manage your cash and focus that cash to improve the return on your investment. Straight through processing is a great way to do that, but using the machine learning tools, using all of the RPAs that SAP has, can help you accelerate and really focus in on the ones that matter, like Haresh said later on about really thinking about the long-term optimal approach to how you manage your cash, manage your money going forward. And then get a cash management assessment. So at Bramasol, we offer cash management assessments. We have our assessment is a guided process resulting in comprehensive evaluation of your cash payments ecosystem against best practices. So maybe Kim, you helped build these. Talk a little bit about what is our assessment and why should people do this? Did I lose Kim?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute it. One thing that's very interesting about our assessments is that, our assessments are not just narrowly focused on, one particular area. They can be focused on various areas that that you may be interested in. It could be on bank rationalization, it could be on your payments, as well as any of the aspects of working capital or treasury in itself and cash management. So what we do is we do go through and come up with, several questionnaires that will guide you through that process so we can do a full valuation end to end on your processes. We look at your different functional requirements. We look at your operational requirements. How are you working technology-wise? Do you have manual processes? Are you using various different systems, or you're using outdated ERP systems and so forth? What are your pain points? What kind of reporting requirements do you require, whether it be legal or regulatory or business related, and what issues are you having with those as well? So there's a couple of different dimensions that we walk through, and these will change a little bit depending on what type of processes that we're looking at. But like for an example here, if I take cash management as an example, we will start off with looking at your functional requirements, where we're looking at all of your end-to-end processes functionally, as to making sure that all the processes that you're using, that we're bouncing those up against your best practices. We're analyzing all of your processes, looking at what are your cash position, what tools are you using, how are you looking at the information? Are you using straight through processing? Are you using manual spreadsheets? Are you using the bank portals? How are you making your investment decisions, and how are you going about funding decisions that you may have? Are you using netting? Are you using various cash concentration using your ERP, or going directly through the banks? What are your functional aspects of your processes? And then we go through your operational parts, where we're going to look at what kind of mechanisms are you using to be able to collect and process your data and bring in your cash position together. You may find that we need to look at your bank rationalization because you have way too many banks, or you're looking at way too many bank accounts that are not necessary, which happens as we grow and mature over time, and you end up having a lot of accounts, and that needs to be taken a look at. We'll look at the different technical aspects. We find different situations where people have different versions of ERPs. They could be even looking at, an S4 and, the old ECC, or they might have even a mix of JD Edwards in that. I found that as well. Or they're using other outsourced systems, which could be various Treasury systems or other types of ERPs that I might not have mentioned. What are your different interfaces that you're looking at? Are you pulling in interest rates? Are you using third parties to process different parts of, your hedging or your investments and so forth? Are you having issues with data archiving? Are you having issues, more importantly, with security? That's one of our biggest items that we end up looking at, especially when it relates to separation of duties and access requirements. Then we'll go back and look at your analytics and reporting to make sure that we look at all the different reporting needs that you have, maybe they're legal and regulatory, and making sure that we're meeting all of your needs for your operation.
Absolutely, thanks. Yeah, and as Kim said, we do this across multiple different areas. We have them for banking and payments, cash management, treasury risk management. We have one that we do for AP processing, ARs, all of the dimensions here that you think of when you think of working capital. So, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us. We can give you a comprehensive view of your cash and payments in this specific case, but in other cases, really looking at your system, really looking at the decisions you made. This is not meant to be just an analysis of your SAP system. It's really an ecosystem view. We look across your entire ecosystem and help you understand, whether you're using solutions to do your investments, are you using them for hedging? Do you have interfaces to Bloomberg? What are some of the tools that you may not be taking advantage? We then come out with specific recommendations on specific actions you can take now. What we try to do is focus in on what do you have today, how can you improve, how can you drive improvements in working capital, and then give you a vision and a roadmap to support future enhancements as you look to take advantage of SAP S/4HANA. Certainly, many of the ones that we've done customers have come back to us and said, I got real benefit today from understanding the small things that I can do to tweak what I do today, whether it's around cash management, treasury management, revenue, project accounting, many of those different areas. And then it helped me build a roadmap for the future and understand where I'm going. So we encourage you, reach out to us. Our team of experts has been doing this for 25 years plus. And we have certainly a great relationship and certainly appreciate all of the support Haresh and his team give us as we work with them on co-innovations for SAP. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I thank Haresh again for during the quarter close, spending almost an hour of his time on here talking to you about those solutions. So Haresh, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Kim, as always, it's a pleasure working with you, and I hope everybody got a lot of great information out of this. Again, follow up with us. You can reach out to me, and you can do that or reach out to us through the portal here. And I hope and wish everybody a very good day, and stay safe, stay happy, and we look forward to getting back to normal. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.